The chill of the winter night, usually a comforting blanket over the quiet town of Oakhaven, felt like a shroud tonight for Alara. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the raw wound in her chest, a gaping void where her heart had been just moments ago. Preston's words, sharp and final, echoed in the silent, snow-dusted street, each syllable a fresh cut. "I'm sorry, Alara. I can't do this. Not with you." He hadn't even looked her in the eye, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond her, as if she were a ghost, already fading. Her festive dress, chosen with such hopeful anticipation, now felt like a cruel joke, a vibrant splash of color against the monochrome despair that had suddenly enveloped her world. She had planned this night for weeks, meticulously arranging the perfect Christmas Eve dinner at the cozy Winter's Hearth Inn, a place renowned for its crackling fires and the scent of spiced mead. She had imagined laughter, shared dreams, perhaps even a proposal beneath the twinkling lights of the grand fir tree. Instead, she stood alone, the empty chair opposite her at their reserved table, a stark monument to her failure to connect, a testament to a love that had never truly existed. The scent of pine and roasted chestnuts, usually so inviting, now churned her stomach. Every caroling voice, every burst of joyous laughter from within the inn, felt like a mockery. She clutched her small velvet purse, her knuckles white, her eyes burning with unshed tears that threatened to freeze on her cheeks. Her breath hitched, a painful gasp in the frigid air. This wasn't just a rejection. It was the shattering of a future she had so carefully constructed in her mind, brick by agonizing brick. It felt like every disappointment, every quiet longing, every unspoken hope she'd ever harbored had coalesced into this one devastating moment. The very air around her seemed to thicken with her sorrow, heavy and suffocating. She felt utterly, irrevocably alone, cast adrift in a sea of holiday cheer that only served to highlight her profound isolation. Preston, the man she had believed was her destiny, had simply walked away, leaving her to pick up the fragmented pieces of a life she no longer recognized. The vibrant anticipation of Christmas, a holiday she cherished, had been brutally extinguished, replaced by a chilling desolation. It was in that moment, when the last flicker of hope seemed to die, that a small insistent tug on her coat sleeve startled her. She flinched, her mind still replaying Preston's cruel words, her vision blurred by the sting of tears. Blinking rapidly, she looked down to find two pairs of luminous, unsettlingly ancient eyes gazing up at her from beneath twin hoods. Two small figures, no older than 5 or 6, stood side by side, their small hands gripping her coat. They were shadowlings, a rare reclusive fey folk, their skin the color of twilight and their hair like spun moonlight. Their presence here, in the HUR, heart of Oakhaven, was as improbable as it was startling. Even at 5 years old, the Shadowling twins had learned to read people, to sense the deepest currents of emotion that pulsed beneath the surface. One, a boy with intensely curious silver eyes, spoke first, his voice a soft murmur that carried an unexpected echo of ancient wisdom. "You look sad, lady. Did the weak man hurt your heart?" The directness of his question, untainted by adult artifice, pierced through Alara's frozen despair. She tried to offer a polite, dismissive smile, but her lips trembled too much to hold it. The other twin, a girl with equally luminous, intelligent eyes, reached out a tiny hand and gently touched Alara's sleeve. "Maybe the weak man didn't come, so you could meet us instead." Her words, simple yet profound, held an uncanny resonance, a hint of something deeper, something fated. Alara stared at them, bewildered, her carefully constructed wall of sorrow momentarily cracked by their innocent intrusion. She knelt, her knees protesting to be at their level, the raw cold biting at her exposed skin, but barely registering against the internal ache. Who are you?" she managed, her voice hoarse. The boy puffed out his tiny chest. "I am Astrid. This is Bronte. We are lost." He looked around with an air of theatrical drama that was utterly endearing, despite the dire claim. Bronte nodded solemnly. "And hungry, and it's cold, and we're supposed to find a tall, sad lady with a red dress. Mama said so." Ilara's brow furrowed. "Your mama told you to find me?" The girl nodded again, her silver hair shimmering in the faint glow of the distant streetlights. "She said you would need us tonight, and that we would need you." This was preposterous, and yet a strange, almost ethereal warmth began to spread through Ilara's chest, a fragile counterpoint to the lingering chill of Preston's rejection. There was an unexpected comfort in their unwavering gaze, a sense of being seen in her profound vulnerability. She looked at their small, pinched faces, their clothes thin for the biting winter air. "You're cold," she stated, reaching out to pull them closer, a maternal instinct she hadn't known she possessed suddenly asserting itself. "Come, let's get you something warm to eat." And so, Preston's cruelty, his callous dismissal, became a beginning, not an end. It was a catalyst, a dramatic pivot point that shifted her entire trajectory, leading her away from a path of predictable unhappiness and towards an unforeseen, fantastical destiny. The image of the empty chair at the winter's Hearth Inn still stung, but now the two small figures clinging to her hands offered a new, unexpected kind of warmth, a fragile spark of hope in the deepening gloom. Ilara led them back towards the inn, a place that had, moments before, represented utter devastation. Now it held the promise of shelter, of warmth, of a strange and unexpected connection. The twins chattered softly, their small voices a hypnotic counterpoint to the silence of the snow. They spoke of a journey from the Shadowlands, of a mother's urgent prophecy, and of a destiny interwoven with Ilara's own. The story was fantastical, almost unbelievable, yet Ilara found herself listening, truly listening, for the first time in hours. As they approached the heavy oak doors of the inn, the sound of the caroling grew louder, and the scent of spiced mead more inviting. Ilara pushed open the door, and the immediate warmth was a physical embrace. The flickering light of the grand fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the festive decorations seemed to glow with a renewed vibrancy. The hostess, a kind-faced woman named Beatrice, immediately noticed Ilara's tear-streaked face and the two small children. "Ilara, my dear, what on earth?" she began, her expression concerned. Ilara simply shook her head, a fragile smile gracing her lips. "Could we have a table for three, Beatrice? And perhaps some hot chocolate and something comforting for these two?" Beatrice, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow at the unusual companions, but her warmth never wavered. "Of course, dear. Right this way. It's Christmas Eve, after all, and no one should be alone." As Beatrice led them to a smaller, more secluded table near the roaring fireplace, Ilara noticed a tall, imposing figure seated alone in a shadowed corner, nursing a glass of dark liquid. He was striking, with eyes like polished obsidian and hair the color of midnight. His features were sharp, almost aristocratic, and there was an aura of quiet power about him, an ancient stillness that set him apart from the boisterous holiday crowd. He wore clothes of fine, dark material that seemed to absorb the light, making him almost disappear into the shadows. He looked up, his gaze sweeping over Ilara and the children, and for a fleeting moment Their eyes met. A jolt, like static electricity, passed between them, a silent recognition of something profound. He seemed to hold her gaze for an instant too long, an unreadable expression in his dark eyes, before he subtly inclined his head and returned his attention to his drink. The twins, however, were not so subtle. Astrid gasped softly, nudging Bronte. "Look! Mama said he would be here too." Bronte nodded vigorously. "The Vampire King. He always drinks that dark stuff." Alara's breath caught. Vampire King? The term sent a shiver down her spine, a mixture of fear and an undeniable strange fascination. Oakhaven had its share of folklore, of whispered tales of ancient beings and hidden powers, but she had always dismissed them as charming local legends. To hear it from the mouths of two small shadowlings, pointing directly at the most compelling man she had ever seen, was something entirely different. She quickly shushed the twins, acutely aware of how loudly their small voices carried in the suddenly quiet corner. The Vampire King, if that was indeed who he was, remained impassive, though a ghost of a smile seemed to touch the corner of his lips. Alara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. She was heartbroken, yes, but she also found herself inexplicably drawn to the powerful, mysterious stranger. There was a quiet strength in him, an undeniable magnetism that resonated with something deep within her. Perhaps it was the shared solitude, the sense of being an outsider in a world brimming with light and joy. As they settled into their table, the twins immediately began to devour the hot chocolate and warm apple tart Beatrice brought them, their earlier shyness replaced by childlike glee. Ilara watched them, a genuine smile finally gracing her lips. The raw, aching wound from Preston's rejection still throbbed, but now it was accompanied by a burgeoning sense of wonder, a curiosity about the strange path her life had suddenly taken. The Vampire King continued to observe them from his shadowed corner, his dark eyes like a silent sentinel. Ilara felt his gaze, a subtle warmth that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. He was a mystery, a powerful enigma, and in her broken state she found herself drawn to the unknown, to the possibility of something entirely different from the life she had once envisioned. The children, oblivious to the undercurrents of adult emotions and ancient powers, giggled over their treats, their silver eyes sparkling with mischief. Astrid looked up at Ilara, his mouth ringed with chocolate. "So are we going to join him now? Mama said we should sit with him too." Ilara nearly choked on her tea. "Join him? Astrid, darling, we just met, and he's a stranger." Bronte nodded sagely. "He's not a stranger to Mama. She said he would keep us safe. And you too." The weight of their words hung in the air, imbued with an uncanny wisdom that defied their tender years. Alara glanced towards the Vampire King, whose dark gaze was now fixed directly on her, a silent question in his eyes. He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in his otherwise stoic expression. It was an invitation, unspoken but clear. Ilara felt a blush creep up her neck. This was insane. But then, hadn't her entire night been insane? She had been abandoned on Christmas Eve, found by prophetic shadowling children, and now, apparently, was being invited to join a mythical being. Her sensible side screamed for caution, for retreat. But another part of her, the part that had been shattered and was now yearning for something real, something profound, urged her forward. "All right," she whispered to the twins, a nervous thrill fluttering in her stomach. "Let's go say hello." As they approached his table, the Vampire King, whose name she now knew was Lysander Voronin from whispered legends, stood, his movements fluid and graceful, like a predator in silent motion. He was even taller up close, his presence commanding. yet not overtly threatening. His eyes, though dark, held a strange depth, a hint of ancient sorrow and immense power. "Ilara," he said, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly gentle, like stones tumbling in a deep riverbed. "And the little mischief makers." He extended a hand towards her, his grip cool, shockingly so, but steady and firm. It was a touch that sent a jolt through her, an undeniable connection that transcended the simple act of a handshake. "Lysander," he introduced himself, though she already knew. "Please sit. It seems fate has decided we should all share this festive evening." The twins, unperturbed by his imposing presence, immediately clambered onto the unoccupied chairs, settling in with the ease of old friends. Astrid, ever the instigator, immediately pointed to Lysander's dark drink. "What's that, King Lysander? Is it blood?" Lysander chuckled, a deep, rich sound that seemed to warm the air. "It is a very specific type of mulled wine, Astrid. Not blood, I assure you. Though I confess, my tastes are somewhat unique." He glanced at Ilara, a knowing glint in his eyes that made her heart pound a little faster. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily between them. Lysander, despite his formidable appearance, possessed a dry wit and an unexpected kindness. He engaged the twins in conversation, asking about their journey and their mother's prophecies with a genuine interest that disarmed Ilara completely. He spoke of ancient lore, of the ethereal plane, and of the delicate balance between the Shadowlands and the mortal realm, all delivered with an understated elegance that made the fantastical seem utterly real. Ilara found herself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in weeks. The children's innocent questions and Lysander's surprisingly human responses wove a tapestry of warmth and belonging around her, slowly, gently mending the jagged edges of her broken heart. The empty chair, the symbol of her earlier devastation, was now just a distant memory, replaced by the vibrant reality of her new extraordinary companions. Lysander turned to her, his dark eyes unreadable, yet intensely focused. "You were hurt tonight, Ilara. I felt it, like a ripple in the fabric of this town's joy. Tell me, if you wish, what caused such sorrow on this night of all nights?" His voice was gentle, devoid of pity, but filled with a profound empathy that resonated deep within her. She found herself recounting the story of Preston, of his dismissive words, of her shattered hopes. As she spoke, the pain resurfaced, but somehow, in Lysander's presence, it felt less potent, less overwhelming. He listened intently, his gaze unwavering, and when she finished, a long silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the crackling fire and the distant carols. Then he spoke, his voice low and resonant. "His loss, Ilara, is truly profound. He did not see the true light within you, the high strength, the resilience. Sometimes," he continued, reaching across the table to gently take her hand, his touch still cool, but infinitely comforting, "the greatest rejections are merely redirections, guiding us towards paths we were always meant to walk." His thumb gently stroked the back of her hand, sending a wave of inexplicable warmth through her entire body. It was a touch that promised healing, that offered solace, that spoke of a connection deeper than any she had ever known. "Can I heal it?" he whispered, his eyes searching hers, a vulnerability in his gaze that mirrored her own. It wasn't a question of magic, not directly, but a plea for permission to mend her broken spirit, to offer her a love that was ancient, profound, and utterly destined. The twins, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, were unusually quiet, watching them with wide, knowing eyes. Ilara looked into Lysander's dark, fathomless gaze, and in that moment she saw not a monster of folklore, but a soul as wounded as her own, a being capable of immense love and unwavering devotion. She saw a future, strange and uncertain, but filled with the promise of true connection, a destiny woven from the threads of rejection and unexpected grace. She felt an unshakable certainty, a feeling that every disappointment, every quiet longing, every tear she had shed had led her here to this very moment, to this powerful, enigmatic man and these two magical children. Her answer was a soft murmur, barely audible above the sounds of the inn, but filled with a conviction that resonated with every fiber of her being. "Yes," she whispered, her hand tightening around his. "Yes, please." And in that moment, as the first snowflakes of Christmas morning began to fall outside, blanketing Oakhaven in a pristine white, Elora knew that her life had irrevocably changed. Preston's cruelty had been a gift, a painful but necessary redirection. For on this Christmas night, heartbreak had given way to a love story more magical, more profound, and more destined than she could have ever imagined. The empty chair at the Winter's Hearth Inn was a symbol of her past, the hand in hers, the luminous eyes of the children, and the whispered promise of the vampire king were the beginning of her extraordinary future. The scent of spiced meat and pine no longer brought sorrow, but the sweet promise of a life filled with an ancient, fated love. Elora felt a sense of peace settle over her, a calm she hadn't known in years. She looked at Lysander, truly saw him, not as a creature of legend, but as a man burdened by an immortal past, yet capable of profound tenderness. The children, Astrid and Bronte, were the bridge, the unexpected catalyst that had brought them together, their innocent wisdom cutting through the complexities of the adult world. Lysander's touch on her hand was a constant grounding presence, a silent vow. He continued to watch her, his gaze unwavering, as if committing every detail of her face to memory. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of kindred spirits drawn together by forces beyond their comprehension. He wasn't just offering to heal her heartbreak. He was offering her a sanctuary, a partnership, a love that transcended the fleeting nature of human relationships. The bustling inn, once a symbol of her isolation, now felt like a warm, welcoming haven. The distant carols which had once mocked her despair now seemed to sing a joyous anthem of hope and new beginnings. Elora realized, with a profound sense of clarity, that Preston's rejection had been the universe's way of clearing a path, of removing an obstacle that had stood between her and her true destiny. She had been so caught up in the pain of what she had lost that she hadn't seen the incredible possibilities that lay ahead. Possibilities revealed by two small magical children and a powerful, ancient king. Lysander's thumb continued its gentle rhythmic stroke on her hand, a silent conversation passing between their skins. It was a gesture of reassurance, of comfort, of an unspoken promise that she would never be truly alone again. The children, as if on cue, began to yawn, their eyelids drooping. Astrid leaned against Lysander's arm, already half asleep. Bronte, equally drowsy, nestled into Elora's side. Lysander looked at the sleeping twins, a soft, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "It seems our little matchmakers have fulfilled their purpose for the night," he murmured, his voice laced with a gentle affection. "Perhaps it is time we found them a more suitable place to rest." Elora nodded, a sense of quiet contentment washing over her. She knew, with an intuitive certainty, that wherever Lysander led them, it would be a place of safety, of warmth, of belonging. The journey ahead was unknown, filled with the fantastical and the extraordinary, but she faced it not with fear, but with a burgeoning sense of excitement and a deep, unwavering hope. The world outside the inn, once a cold and desolate place, now shimmered with the promise of magic and faded love. Alara looked at Lysander again, truly seeing the depth of his dark ancient eyes, and in them she saw a reflection of her own burgeoning strength, her own rediscovered hope. This Christmas Eve, instead of heartbreak, she had found a king, a family, and a destiny she could never have dreamed of. And as the first rays of Christmas morning peeked over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the snow-covered town, Alara knew that her true story had only just begun. The whispers of the vampire king, far from being a tale of darkness, had ushered in a new dawn filled with light, magic, and an everlasting love. The world had shifted on its axis, and Alara, once lost and heartbroken, was now found, cherished, and utterly irrevocably home.